In the last video, we learned about the basic concepts of lines and angles. In this video, we'll learn more about angles. Let's quickly brush up what we learned in the last video. An angle which is equal to 90 degrees is called as right angle. An angle which is equal to 180 degrees is called as straight angle. An angle which is less than 90 degrees is called as acute angle. And angles which are greater than 90 degrees but less than 180 degrees are called as obtuse angles. Angles which are greater than 180 degrees but less than 360 degrees are called as reflex angles. An angle which is equal to 360 degrees is called as complete angle. Note that it makes a full circle. Now let's learn about complementary angles. When sum of two angles is equal to 90 degrees, they form complementary angles. If you look at two angles, one is 30 degrees and other one is 60 degrees, and the sum of these two angles is equal to 90 degrees. Therefore, these angles are called as complementary angles. So now if we place these two angles next to each other, they form a 90-degree angle. Therefore, these two angles are complementary angles. Let's look at another example. In this figure, the two angles are each 45 degrees and their sum is equal to 90 degrees. Therefore, they are complementary to each other. Now let's do some exercises about complementary angles. Can two acute angles be complement to each other? In the last example, we looked at two angles 30 degrees and 60 degrees. Both were acute angle and their sum was equal to 90 degrees. Therefore, two acute angles can be complementary to each other. Can two obtuse angles be complement to each other? So if both the angles are obtuse angles, that means that they are more than 90 degrees and definitely their sum would be more than 90 degrees. Therefore, two obtuse angles cannot be complement to each other. Can two right angles be complement to each other? So if we take two right angles, that means each of them is equal to 90 degrees and this sum would be equal to 180 degrees. Therefore, their sum would be more than 90 degrees. Therefore, two right angles cannot be complement to each other. Now let's learn about supplementary angles. When the sum of two angles is equal to 180 degrees, they are called as supplementary angles. If we join these two angles, their sum is equal to 180 degrees. Therefore, the angles are supplement to each other, or they are supplementary angles. Now let's do some exercises on supplementary angles. Can two obtuse angles be supplementary? So if both the angles are obtuse angles, their sum, each of them would be more than 90 degrees. Therefore, the sum of these two angles would be more than 180 degrees. Therefore, two obtuse angles cannot be supplementary to each other. Can two acute angles be supplementary? So if both the angles are acute angles, each of them would be less than 90 degrees and the sum would be less than 180 degrees. Therefore, two acute angles cannot be supplementary. So in order for two angles to be supplementary, one of them has to be acute and other one has to be obtuse. Can two right angles be supplementary? So if we take two right angles, each of them is equal to 90 degrees and their sum is equal to 180 degrees. Therefore, two right angles are definitely supplementary. Now let's learn about adjacent angles. When we place two angles besides each other and they have few properties, they make adjacent angles. Let's learn about the properties of the adjacent angles. An adjacent angle have a common vertex, the one shown in yellow dot here. They have a common arm. So both these angles have a common arm, which is shown in yellow here. And the non-common arms are on either side of the common arm. So if you look at the non-common arms of these two angles, they are on either side of the common arms. So all these three properties make up a pair of adjacent angles. So we say that angle 1 and 2 are adjacent to each other. Let's take a look at these two figures and identify if they are adjacent angles or not. If you look at the left hand side, they have a common vertex. Angle 1 and 2 have got a common arm, and the non-common arms are on either side of the common arms. Therefore, the figure on the left or the angles on the left form adjacent angles. Now let's take a look at angles on the right hand side. So both these angles have a common arm. The non-common arms are on either side of the common arms, but they have got different vertex. So angle 2 has got a vertex here and angle 1 vertex is here. Therefore, they have a non-common vertex. Therefore, the angles on the right hand side are not adjacent angles. Now let's learn about linear pair. So when the pair of adjacent angles whose non-common sides are opposite rays, they form linear pair. So let's look at the two angles present here. So angle 1 and 2 have to be adjacent angles. So they have a common vertex, they have a common arm, and the non-common arms are on the either side of the common arm. So they form an adjacent pair or adjacent angles. And the non-common sides are opposite rays. That is, they are in a straight line. So both the non-common arms are in a straight line. So they form a linear pair. So the angles in linear pair are supplementary to each other. That is, the sum of the angles is equal to 180 degrees. Now let's learn about vertically opposite angles. When two line segments or lines intersect each other, they form vertically opposite angles. In this figure, line P and Q intersect each other to form two pairs of vertically opposite angles. So angle 1 is vertically opposite to angle 3 and angle 2 is vertically opposite to angle 4. Now vertically opposite angles are equal to each other. Let's try to prove how vertically opposite angles are equal to each other. If you look at angle 1 and 2, they form a linear pair because 1 and 2 are adjacent to each other and the sum of angle 1 and 2 is equal to 180 degrees because they lie on the same line, that is Q. And if you look at angle 1 and 4, they again form a linear pair. That is, the sum of angle 1 and 4 is equal to 180 degrees. So you have an equation where 1 plus 2 is equal to 180 degrees and angle 1 plus angle 4 is equal to 180 degrees. What this means is that angle 2 is equal to angle 4. So in this video, we learned about complementary angles, supplementary angles, adjacent angles, and vertically opposite angles. In the next video, we'll learn more about angles. Thank you.